From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Now at 6, growing concern for the mentally ill as the Trump administration gets aggressive in tackling homelessness.
Plus, transit riders should check their schedules ahead of the big sink in the Bay Area.
And later, children injured in Gaza by Israeli troops are welcomed in San Francisco. Details from their long journey coming up. We're live at the CBS studios in San Francisco. I'm Brian Heck.
And I'm Andrea Nakano. President Trump has a plan to address the homelessness issue. He's scheduled a press conference for tomorrow.
The president released a statement saying that he would take care of homelessness, quote, just like I took care of the border.
This is raising concerns here in the Bay Area. Back in July, the president signed an executive order addressing the homeless crisis, where he identified mental illness as one of the root causes. That order endorsed forced commitment as a way to solve the problem, but a group of mental health advocates say that's the wrong approach. John Ramos has the story.
For years now, a group called FASME, Families Advocating for the Seriously Mentally Ill, have been asking government to address the issue of mental illness. Now, it looks like that's happening, but not in the way they were hoping for. FASME has been at the forefront of mental health advocacy in the East Bay, staging protests in Alameda County over the lack of treatment at the Santa Rita jail, where most people in crisis end up.
People don't understand. If you haven't lived with it, you don't understand the complexity of serious mental illness.
Margot Daschle has a sister who's living on the streets with a mental illness, so you'd think she might be happy about President Trump's executive order that includes, quote, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment to restore public order.
If one looks at it superficially, oh, this is humane. But if you go into it, you see that it's penalizing, and not promoting treatment.
The women of FASME all share the struggle of having a loved one with a serious mental illness. They've criticized local governments for being hands-off when it comes to treatment, and ironically have even advocated that some compulsory treatment may be necessary. But the simplistic language of the executive order has them concerned.
We don't need an administration that is as provenly callous towards the vulnerable as this one to be forcing our kids into places that are not designed to treat them, that are not designed to support them. That is the fear, that they'll criminalize an illness.
The order portrays homelessness and mental illness as a crime and safety issue and focuses on law enforcement as a solution. Allison Monroe had an adoptive daughter who died of a fentanyl overdose while living on the streets.
If they defined her as an offender, they might put her in jail forever. And I wouldn't have any say about it or any way of finding out what's going on. So I would not want this kind of system implemented anywhere near the many places in the Bay Area where my daughter used to hang out.
The history of government's involvement with mental illness is a dark one. For much of the early 20th century, patients were locked away in insane asylums that became known as snake pits. That changed starting in the 1960s.
When the asylums closed, people were supposed to have robust treatment within the community. That didn't happen. People wound up on the streets. So it's like a pendulum that swings from one extreme to the other. And it swung all the way to the side of neglect. And now we're afraid he's going to take us back there, rather than saying, what are the targeted ways that we can improve the system we have now?
The pendulum is indeed swinging with a force that is hard to predict. But so far, the simple answers to problems as complicated as homelessness and mental illness aren't giving those with a personal connection much room for hope.
Yeah, without more mental health hospitals, advocates believe that the homeless might be treated the same way undocumented immigrants are, sent to makeshift camps. Andrea?
Well, the Gifford fire burning in Central Coast is now 32% contained. It's the largest fire the state has seen this year. It sparked more than a week ago and has burned 117,000 acres in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties. So far, at least 10 people have been hurt, most of them firefighters, and 2 structures have been destroyed.
Back in the Bay Area, close call in Morgan Hill, although this picture doesn't look like it, but you see all that charred ground there. Fire crews put out a fire that was burning dangerously close to homes. This was in the area of Monterey Highway and Madrone Parkway this afternoon. And from fire to weather, here's Darren.
Well, just to pick up on the story of that fire burning down there on the Central Coast, when they get really big and you can see the plume of smoke from space, that's usually your sign. It's on the virtual set, but it shows up a little bit better right here. See it? Now, you've got your plume of smoke emanating off that fire. And then you've got the big blanket of marine layer out here, just like tantalizingly close. There's so much humidity and cool, damp air out here, but it is too low. It's being squashed down close to the surface of the water, and it is not getting inland here to help. Let me show you what's going to happen to that plume of smoke, because we can come back to the virtual set for that. And you got your little smudge down there on here. You can still see it, but let's put it into the high-resolution smoke forecast. Now you can't miss it. We're going to look at 2 days. It's going to go by really fast. Kind of wafts in and wafts out a bit. That took us all the way to Tuesday. You see your timestamp down there? Takeaway from this is, look out the window. You can see there's a little bit of haze out there. I mean, the view off in the distance towards Mount Diablo is a bit obscured from our vantage point. Usually you can see it clearer than that. But the good news is the air down at the ground is okay. We're not really pulling in enough smoke from that fire to raise any significant concerns from an air quality standpoint. And from the forecast we just saw, it's going to continue going to the south from here. When we get back together again in the full forecast, I'm going to show you the cool down. Most of next week is nothing like this weekend. Remember the summer we were living well below average? That's coming back. I'll show you how low we're going to go in just a bit. For now, Andrea, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Darren. Well, major changes kicked in today for those who rely on AC transit. In the East Bay, they adjusted nearly 85% of its bus lines in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. The changes all have to do with budget troubles and post-pandemic travel pattern shifts. As Donlin reports, AC Transit officials are urging riders to give themselves some extra time.
The best way to see if your bus is affected is to check the AC Transit website. Another way, check your bus stop. All the impacted stops have new signs showing which lines were removed, which were added. In this case, this bus stop has been moved to a different street. Every Sunday, Oakland resident Rosemarie Kiamba takes the 33 bus to work. It was supposed to arrive at her downtown stop at 11:30 a.m. But 25 minutes later, still no bus.
Maybe it came earlier than expected, or maybe it didn't come at all, and I'm still waiting here. I'm still waiting for the next scheduled bus.
She had no idea about the major AC Transit changes that started on Sunday, and she didn't check the sign at her stop. She was just so used to her routine, but there it was. The sign said the 33 line is discontinued.
I wish I looked at the sign earlier because I just saw the 88 go by, and if I had known, I would have hopped on it. But honestly, it's a learning experience. You learn, and now I know. And hopefully, when I go to work, they'll be okay.
Running late for work, she hopped into a rideshare. That's why AC Transit is urging its 3 million monthly riders to check their routes and plan ahead.
We certainly knew that we were dealing with fewer riders, and that also meant we're dealing with less resources. We simply can't afford to operate the same number of buses that we did prior to 2020. So what we're doing is, after 2 years, we found out how to best utilize the money that we have.
Under the realigned service changes, nearly 85% of their routes, 104 lines from Richmond to Fremont, will see adjustments. Some lower ridership routes are cut. Lines with high demand will get more frequent service or new routes. It's a response to hybrid and remote work trends and ongoing budget problems.
Right now, we're at 85% capacity. Again, about 15% decline from where we were pre-pandemic. And our transit district is dealing with a $4.5 million deficit that we've never seen in our 65-year history. And so we are dipping into reserves to cover those deficits for this operating year.
72 is not coming.
Transit officials say some riders, like this man, will have to find a new bus line due to discontinued service. Some will have longer waits. That's why they're asking people to allow extra time, especially as many East Bay students return to school on Monday.
I don't understand all the changes, but, I guess they gotta do them.
No, I don't get frustrated. Life is too short.
Just gotta be patient.
Just have to be patient.
Rosemarie says losing her route is frustrating, but she still believes in public transit.
Also, it's really expensive to have a car, especially with parking costs.
AC Transit officials say if they get more money later on, they can always bring back the cut routes and add more frequency. Now, state lawmakers are talking about a regional tax measure to help fund all Bay Area transit agencies, but nothing is final yet.
And starting on Monday, BART will make minor schedule changes to improve transfers between the two transit agencies to reduce wait times.
An update to a story we first brought you yesterday. We're learning that one person has died after a two-car crash in Walnut Creek. Happened near the intersection of Ignacio Valley and Oak Grove Road yesterday afternoon. No details have been released in this by investigators on the victim who died. 5 people, though, were taken to the hospital, and their conditions are unknown. Andrea?
A Burlingame community is in mourning after a 4-year-old boy was killed and a 6-year-old girl was injured in a pedestrian crash. There's a growing memorial in front of a restaurant on Donnelly Avenue in downtown. Police say on Thursday, a 19-year-old driver was coming out of a parking lot when an e-bike crashed into her sedan. She accelerated and veered off the road and hit the children. The 6-year-old girl was taken to the hospital. No update so far on the extent of her injuries. 2 people shared with us what they saw in the aftermath.
We were walking by and we saw all the commotion. We're just absolutely heartbroken when we heard everything.
We just brought over flowers in memory of a little boy who lost his life. Somebody so young, to hear that happen, I just know that would tear a family apart, and it's just truly heartbreaking.
Police say the driver stayed on the scene and is cooperating with investigators. At this point, they do not believe drugs or alcohol appear to be factors.
In Pleasant Hill, a driver is behind bars after doing this. Police say the person drove off the second story of a parking garage downtown, and that's the result. The driver was arrested for DUI. Nobody was hurt. The car has been towed. Whoever was inside wasn't seriously hurt. And we're just hours away from the morning commute on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, but starting this fall, we don't know the exact date yet, the commute will come with no cyclists and much less congestion. 80,000 vehicles cross the bridge every day compared to about 140 cyclists who used the dedicated lane on the upper deck. Now it'll be opened up again for emergency responders and available for disabled vehicles. On weekends, though, the lane will be open to pedestrians and cyclists. Advocates say the move will save drivers about 20 minutes a trip. Andrea?
Well, good news for drivers in the South Bay. Northbound 680 is now reopened. Caltrans completed its repairs on the Mission San Jose overpass in Fremont, a full 15 and a half hours ahead of schedule.
And coming up, it's free speech, unless you're attacking Israel's war in Gaza. That's the legal battle between Stanford student newspaper and the Trump administration. We'll be hearing from the case's lead attorney next.
A freedom of speech watchdog is suing the Trump administration on behalf of the Stanford student newspaper, arguing non-citizens writing for the paper are worried about publishing certain stories that could leave them open to deportation. Joining us now to talk more about this lawsuit is Connor Fitzpatrick, the lead attorney on this case. Connor, thank you for joining us on a Sunday night. I want to start off with this first question. So what makes this case different from other cases challenging student deportations?
Our case is unique because we're challenging the 2 statutes that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is relying on to target lawfully present non-citizens for protected speech. One allows him to revoke a visa for any reason at any time, and the other allows him to deport a lawfully present non-citizen for protected speech as long as he says that the speech is endangering American foreign policy. But both of those are flatly contrary to the First Amendment when it comes to protected speech.
And let me be clear here. The people that are being targeted, the non-citizen students, it's a clear agenda that they are going after people that are speaking out against Palestine and the current administration.
Yeah, we think there's a very clear pattern in terms of who this administration is targeting so far. We've seen it with Mahmoud Khalil, we've seen it with Rumesia Ozturk, and others that this administration has targeted for deportation. But let's be very clear, and this is why we're challenging the statutes and not just a particular policy of the Trump administration. These are statutes that can be easily abused by either political party, regardless of who is in power. Giving the government of any party the ability to deport people who espouse a message that the government disagrees with is profoundly contrary to America's tradition of free speech and the First Amendment.
And so on that note, what kind of impact can this case have on all non-citizens in the U.S. legally and their protection of free speech?
Our hope is that this case creates the precedent to forever take this tool out of the government's toolbox, that no administration, Republican, Democrat, or any party that might come along in the future should be able to target someone for deportation, should be able to exile someone from this country simply because the government of the day doesn't like their opinion.
Now, with any lawsuit, it takes a lot of time for these cases to go through the legal system. What are some of the protections for these students now?
Right now, the protections for the students are quite thin, and that's why we're filing this lawsuit. There's been quite a lot of litigation in other courts across the country that are challenging the detentions of some of the folks like Ms. Ozturk and Mr. Khalil. But what's really critical here and why we're filing this case is to take away the statutory authority for the government to pursue these deportations to begin with. We think that if we cut the head off the snake, that will fix the problem for good.
Well, Attorney Connor Fitzpatrick, thank you, Connor, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to switch it up to weather now, and here's Darren.
Well, we've got a beautiful marine layer right off the coast, Andrea, and just blanketing. You don't even see any ocean out here. That's how gray it is. And when you look at the time lapse behind me, you can see the clouds have been streaming over. That's San Bruno Mountain out there. You kind of see the top of the ridgeline. Look what the clouds are doing. They're coming in, and then they are getting pushed down. That's always a sign. High pressure is still with us. High pressure is going to warm you up. That's why it's so warm. And it's also going to push down on the atmosphere so the marine layer cannot rise above the mountains. Get a close-up look at what it's doing here. You kind of see how it's streaming in through the Petaluma Gap, and look what it's doing through the Golden Gate right now. It's just streaming right in, doing that classic view where you kind of get that one ribbon that goes right over Alcatraz and then hits the East Bay Hills. Classic. All right, let's come back out to the wide view, because even if you're not under that or the little patch, which is streaming in right now through the Petaluma Gap up here, that shows you're going to wake up to gray skies tomorrow in the North Bay. But let's see what it will do. We'll go to the futurecast for that. How is this going to grow and take over pretty much the entire bay by tomorrow morning? And all we have to do is play that forward. And look how it spills in, contours beautifully to the bay. It's going to fill in Napa Valley. That's you up here tomorrow morning. And I think we probably will see the clouds just barely creep over the East Bay and get out to the Tri-Valley. It won't be a lot and it won't last long, but we'll see some of the low clouds get out here. I don't think it's enough to help cool you down significantly tomorrow, because as we play this into tomorrow afternoon, it's all melting back. By the time we get to 1 o'clock, it's back out over the ocean where it is now. And it's almost an exact repeat tomorrow of the day that you just had. Let me show you what I mean by that. We'll take a look at the colors on here. Let's get the contours. This is a very hot looking map. I mean, those fuchsia colors out there are getting up around 105. The yellows over here are upper 60s and low 70s. And look at the little bite that's being taken out through the delta, where the cooler air comes in on the delta breeze and just helps it out enough over here. All right, what's it mean for the numbers? How are we going to do tomorrow on daytime highs? Technically about 2 or 3 degrees cooler over here, but you're still into the mid 90s. I'll get out of the way. Look at the number on there for Livermore. You're going to 91. Antioch's going to 94. We'll go to 90 in Concord. So these, it's about a 3 or 4 degree drop from where you were. North Bay, you're doing just fine because you keep getting that cool air spilling in through the Petaluma Gap. And when we work our way south from there, let's get the Peninsula and the Santa Clara Valley in here. Low to mid 80s, few degrees above average, but nothing crazy. This is Monday. You see the timestamp on there. When we get to the 7-day forecast, by Wednesday, some of these temperatures over here are only like low to mid 80s. And that's where most of next week is actually going to fall. We're going back to the summer you've been having. You just had to get through this weekend, which now you pretty much have. And then tomorrow is going to be just about as hot as this. And then by the middle of the week, the cool down is really going to set in. Let me show you what that looks like in a 7-day forecast. We'll start off with our inland microclimate first. And the number tomorrow still looks pretty hot. And then it's going to start coming down after that. So we'll do our 90 tomorrow on Monday. And then it's at least a few mid-80s showing up there on the 7-day forecast. And then by the time we get to Sunday, we'll probably double down on that idea. That's next weekend. Next weekend is going to be about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the weekend you just had. So start thinking about that for your plans for next weekend. And really all you have to do for that is think back to what most every other weekend was like so far this summer for your part of the Bay, because we're going to go right back to that. And that was pretty nice from temperature staying below average.
From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Welcome back. Demonstrators marched through downtown San Jose holding signs, banging pots, and protesting the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. This as many face starvation in the war-torn region. We heard from a protester who went to Gaza on a humanitarian mission on why this matters.
I think it is important that we stand up for human rights and for health care of all people, wherever they may be.
While more aid has been entering the region, humanitarian groups say it's not nearly enough. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council held a rare meeting Sunday and condemned Israel's plan to intensify its 22-month war with Hamas by taking control of Gaza City. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisted it was the best way to end the war.
Tens of thousands of Palestinian children have been injured by the Israeli military in Gaza. 3 of them are now getting treatment here in the Bay Area. The kids, along with their families, landed at SFO earlier this week. Katie Nielsen was at the airport and has this story.
It was an emotional and exciting welcome for the children and their families, greeted by volunteers and also the doctors who helped coordinate their treatment, like Dr. Mohammed Soubey.
Our goal really is to provide them with the best care we can to give them, the best opportunity at healing.
He's an emergency room doctor in the South Bay and went to Gaza twice in the past few years as a healthcare volunteer. That's where he met 6-year-old Hazal, 8-year-old Enis, and 14-year-old Leanne.
I haven't seen them for almost a year. And so this is a big reunion for me personally as, not as their doctor, but as just as a good, very close friend.
All 3 children were injured in separate bombings in Gaza, with Hazal and Enis both suffering traumatic leg injuries, and Leanne dealing with severe burns and shrapnel embedded in her foot and leg.
Some of them have orthopedic injuries that really require multiple complex surgeries, rehabilitation, and as you can imagine, with the annihilation of the healthcare infrastructure in Gaza, this is not possible. We cannot do this on the ground in Gaza.
The number of children in Gaza that currently need significant medical care is in the tens of thousands. So it is absolutely not something that the healthcare system there can accommodate.
The group Heal Palestine helps children and their immediate family members come to the U.S. on medical visas. They find private donors to pay all their medical bills, plus host families who can offer places to stay close to the hospitals. The first issue that will be addressed for all of the kids is malnutrition.
We have nutritionists and various other specialists on board to see how we can really give them the best chance at maximizing this treatment.
In addition, the children will receive dental care and mental health services, plus will also have some much-needed downtime just to enjoy being kids.
All of them and all of their family members have never seen the world outside of Gaza, which is 2/3 the size of the city of San Jose.
Territory that's been
fought over for 3.5 years.
President Trump is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin this Friday about the war in Ukraine. But there is a chance that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky may also be present. CBS News' Willie James Inman has more from the White House.
Later this week, President Trump is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss a possible end to the war in Ukraine, but much remains up in the air. Among the unanswered questions, what role will Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky play in Friday's talks in Alaska? On Saturday, CBS News confirmed the Trump administration is open to including Zelensky in Friday's summit with President Putin. On Sunday's Face the Nation, Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. Oksana Markarova suggested President Zelensky is ready and willing to be there.
With regard to President Zelensky, he has been, since day one of this horrible aggression, committed to peace, and we have shown that he is ready to be anywhere to advance the agenda of peace. So if needed, President Zelensky, of course, will be present at the meetings.
Over the weekend, several European leaders issued a statement saying a path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine. President Trump indicated on Friday that any peace deal with Russia and Ukraine may involve a swap of territory.
Looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years, we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping.
President Zelensky said Saturday his country will, quote, not give land to the occupier.
My absolute conviction on Friday is that this is President Trump making sure that Putin is serious. And if he is not, then it will stop there. If he is serious, then from Friday onwards, the process will continue. Ukraine getting involved, the Europeans being involved.
The weekend developments with Ukraine come after Vice President J.D. Vance met with Ukrainian and European officials in Britain on Saturday.
And coming up, the legacy and devastation of the atomic bomb 80 years later. That's next.
Wednesday marked 80 years since the U.S. dropped the world's first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, Nagasaki was bombed. Now a new documentary is shedding light on the devastation of that nuclear fallout. Ryan Yamamoto explains.
Inside a tiny museum in San Francisco's Japantown, Rosalind Tanai is the keeper of a dark reminder of what happened 80 years ago in Japan.
Quite haunting.
A doll that was pulled from the rubble of the second of two atomic blasts that killed 110,000 people instantly and at least another 100,000 people from radiation exposure.
American family brought it in and let us know that they had kept it all these years. It was given to them by a family that survived the atomic bomb blast.
And it's those survivors' stories that Tonai wants people to experience and understand, including San Francisco's Jack Dariki, a Japanese-American visiting family in Hiroshima who became stuck in Japan because of the war. He was working at a factory on the outskirts of the city when the first bomb dropped. KPIX5 interviewed him 10 years ago.
We saw 3 aircraft coming above us. I said, what is this? And then at that time the bomb exploded. All the factory window went out. It flew over my head. I was weighed 100 pounds then. I was floating in the air.
And now a new documentary, Atomic Echoes, wants to shed more light on the devastation.
The bombs we have now are so much stronger than...
I had a chance to talk to the filmmakers Victoria Kelly and Karen Tanabe.
Very few Americans understand what happened under the mushroom cloud, right? We all see the exact same image, which really covers up the atrocities. And then we stop there in the history books.
Tanabe's great-great-uncle was part of the rebuilding effort in Hiroshima, and Kelly's grandfather was an American medic in Nagasaki who witnessed the effects of peak radiation sickness. He suffered from PTSD and died at the age of 42. The film interviews other American medics who talked about what they saw.
And they were really torn, like they were really proud of their service. And at the same time, all of them said, you know, we were there and we can't ever have these bombs happen again. because they were the worst thing we've ever seen.
For Tanai, it is a topic still relevant today.
We're on the cusp of a nuclear buildup. This is really a call for world peace, so we really need to take a pause and take a look at the human costs and the consequences of a possible nuclear fallout.
Her hope, history that happened even 8 decades ago, will never repeat itself.
All right, coming up in the first alert forecast, a beautiful time lapse of the marine layer coming in. That's San Bruno Mountain in the distance. Look what it looks like on the virtual set. This is just about to squeak in tonight and take over pretty much the entire bay. There is a cool down coming, but it's not tomorrow. Even with this help, you might get a few degrees cooler tomorrow. So one more day just like the weekend. And then most of the 7-day forecast, we're going back where we were for most of the summer. Remember that? Well below average. I'll show you what that looks like and how it'll play out all the way into next weekend even. Forecast coming up next.
That is Phineas playing at Outside Lands on the festival's third and final day at Golden Gate Park. Music fans have been flocking to San Francisco all week long to see their favorite artists. And wrapping up the festival tonight are headliners Hozier and Anderson .Paak. Their set is set to begin at around 8 o'clock. Outside Lands draws more than 200,000 people each year. Did you know that, Andrea?
I did not know that.
No,
well,
did.
It's the last day of the Bay Area Aloha Festival. The Pacific Islanders Cultural Association hosts the event this year. Marks its 30th anniversary. Guests enjoy live music, hula dancing, and ukulele lessons. More than a dozen restaurants serve traditional food, including wok-fired noodles and shaved ice. The two-day event brings attendees together to celebrate the culture of the Pacific Islands from thousands of miles away.
This weekend is all about aloha. It's just the spreading, the perpetuating the culture of Hawaii and the Polynesian Islands to give to the people who are not at home anymore.
An estimated 6,000 people attended the festival yesterday, with organizers saying twice as many showed up today. And it was a good day for it, Darren.
Yeah, it was, Andrea. But one thing I want to talk about is the haze that is visible in the sky. In fact, you can actually see a layer of smoke showing up when you look in the right places. And I'll show you a few vantage points. Not necessarily out our window. That's just kind of generic haze out there. And even as you kind of look up high, you're seeing more influence of the marine layer there than anything else. Look at the virtual map. It's really faint on here. But the fire coming up from the smoke coming up from the fire burning down in San Luis Obispo County barely shows up there. What you see on here is way more marine layer than anything else. Let's go to the somewhat even higher resolution look right there. See it? So that is a plume of smoke coming off of the fire burning down in San Luis Obispo County. It's so high you can see it casting shadows. This is all the marine layer, which is too low. In other words, come back to the virtual set. There's so much cool, damp air out here off the coast of where that fire is. But as we were seeing in our time lapse of the marine layer here at home a moment ago, high pressure is so intense right now, or at least intense enough, it's holding all that down near the surface, and it cannot get over to where that fire is burning, and it's not really going to be able to help. Look at this a slightly different way. I'll show you the cameras where you can see it in our sky. So we'll leave behind the wide view on it. Now, we've been watching that time lapse. Here it is. There's the marine layer. Watch it stream in. Staying fairly low. High pressure's holding it down. Look above it. There are no other clouds in our sky right now. The only cloud we've got is the marine layer. What looks like a cloud above it is actually the diffuse smoke coming from that fire. Let's go to a different camera. Now it shows up a little more. So here comes, this is live. Marine layer coming in. This is from the Salesforce Tower looking directly south. Harmless marine layer. That is smoke out there off in the distance. So it looks ominous. And it's never good when you can see that much smoke. But as we have been reporting on that fire, there's a lot of smoke coming off of it across the southern part of the state. Our air quality here is good. But let's put it into the future cast and watch where it will go over the next 2 days. Back to the big view. We're going to switch from looking at satellite to high-resolution imagery of where the plume of smoke is going to be going. The deeper the red, the higher the concentrations. We just looked at 2 days. It went kind of fast. I apologize. I'll play it again. Watch 2 days. The majority of the smoke will actually go the other way. So takeaway, then I'll move on to the temperatures. You'll probably continue to see some smoke in the sky off in the distance. I just checked the air quality sensors. Every single one of them, Bay Area wide, is green. They're all good. And we've got no reason to believe we're going to get higher concentrations of this than we have, but you're going to see it. If you hadn't already seen it just from looking out off into the distance, it'll be out there, but we're doing okay. All right, let's bring the story back home. If we know what the marine layer is doing here, now we want to see what it does tonight, and it'll fill in pretty much the entire interior of the bay and even get into some of the inland valleys. Napa, this is you getting contoured up here. You wake up at 7 a.m., you kind of see the contours of Napa there between the Mayacamas Mountains. And look over here. Get a few clouds that will sneak over into the Tri-Valley tomorrow, but it won't last long. So maybe you get just a hint of an influence for the inland valleys tomorrow morning of marine layer gray. And then by 1 o'clock, everybody's got sunshine. And a warm day. In fact, almost identical to the day you just had. Here are the numbers for tomorrow. I'll get out of the way, pick out your corner of the bay and see where you'll be for daytime highs. These are technically a little bit cooler than you were today. Not much, but about 3 or 4 degrees cooler than you were, especially for Livermore and Concord. And Antioch 94 still hot, I know, but it's an improvement. And 80 in Santa Rosa. You've been getting off easy. And if we can, let's just skip down to the South Bay. Let's get Santa Clara Valley in there, and let's see what Los Gatos and San Jose will be doing. A lot of low to mid 80s on there. Okay, so that brings us up to speed on the temperatures for tomorrow. Now let's get into that trend, because tomorrow is the last day like that. Tuesday will be a little bit cooler, but this cooling trend really kicks in on Wednesday. And even though we might moderate up or down a bit, we're not going to do much up. There'll be plenty of staying put. Look at next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, a lot of low to mid 80s. You were low to mid 90s this weekend. So next weekend is going to be a lot. If you wanted it cooler, next weekend you got it. No more mid 90s. You'll be back into the low to mid 80s for daytime highs for our warmest inland microclimates. That is below average for this time of year. Once again, after a brief visit over about the last 4 days of being above average. That didn't last long. There's your 7-day forecast for the bay. A lot of marine layer and temperatures in the low 70s. Okay, Brian, over to you.
Yeah, Darren, Andrea and I would like to talk to you after the newscast about this. We'd also like to talk to you about this. A 200-foot wide chunk of rock, once thought to be a candidate to hit Earth, will miss us. But it could hit the moon. What happens if that happens? It's pretty incredible. Stay tuned. Welcome back. An extraordinary celestial event could unfold in the night sky in less than a decade if an asteroid passing Earth collides with the moon. Here's more about the chances of impact taking place. Watch. When you put your eye to a big telescope, the planet Saturn or Jupiter look pretty good.
Sometimes we can even see the polarized caps on Mars. But the moon, I mean, pop. Wow. It's right there in your eye. You could see all the craters, you could see all the features, and that, for me, that's what makes it my favorite object.
Joe Carousel is the volunteer coordinator at the Robert Ferguson Observatory.
It's a public observatory in Kenwood. We have 3 major telescopes, which we invite the public to come on up and take a look through every month. Check this out.
You still occasionally take a glimpse at the moon?
Every chance I can.
And if the moon's a good target for telescopes, it's also a potential target for asteroid 2024 YR4, a 200-foot wide chunk of rock that once had a chance of striking Earth, and while that won't happen,
it could possibly hit the moon.
At Chabot College, Professor Scott Hildreth addresses the odds of the asteroid hitting the moon in the year 2032.
Right now, it's about 4%, which means 96% that it won't.
But the fact that it's been hit more than 1 million times is literally written on the moon's face. The moon is covered in craters. So you'd think this happens all the time. Does it?
What a good question, because it might be every 5,000 years that something this big slams into the moon to leave us a crater you and I could see. 5,000 years. That's why if it does happen in 2032, you and I and hopefully a lot of other people are out watching it.
It could produce a shower of debris that might translate to meteor showers so robust they'd be meteor storms if the asteroid actually does hit the moon.
Big if.
Big if.
Big if. Capital letters, big if.
But if it does, be pretty cool to see.
I think so. I mean, there's got plenty of craters up there, so what's the problem with one more?
We'll find out when the asteroid's orbit is refined when it comes back around in about 3 years. In the meantime, as you said, what's one more crater?
What's one more crater? And that, for me, that's what makes it my favorite object.
You know, speaking of craters, why does the moon have so many? It's covered with them, and we don't have any.
Right.
Or we have very few.
Well, there's Meteor Crater in Arizona.
Right.
But everything, because we got an atmosphere that will erode all that stuff away.
Yeah. We get rain, we get wind, we get quakes, we
Yeah.
get volcanoes. The moon, no atmosphere. Unprotected.
It's great for looking at craters, that
It is. That's exactly what makes it such a great sight. Thanks for watching. 60 Minutes is next, and we'll see you back here at 11.